do you believe there's anybody in the world that could talk negative to me about you and get away with it?
Probably not. 100% not.
How do you know that?
Because we have that relationship.
Yeah, but people that you've talked to me negative about, what did I tell you?
Yeah. Well, they know we're in social covenant together.
You got 48 hours to go
Yeah.
talk to them.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to do that to you, I'm certainly going to do that for you.
This is the Ford Taylor Talks podcast, where leadership stops being information and starts becoming transformation. Real tools, real change in your relationships, your team, and your life. Let's get into it. Ford, we're talking about specific transformational leadership tools. And I remember the first time I went to class, you know, those people that flip through the manual.
Yeah, I
And
call them
kind
their A4 personality. They got to see the end before they start. Yeah, I get it.
I remember I was peeking forward and I landed on page 11, but in the manual. And the heading was how to approach others. And I'm thinking, well, this is right in my wheelhouse. Like, this is what I do. I'm really good at it. And like, I could write the chapter on how not to approach others.
I think you actually could. I'm sure.
An amazing tool, a very integral part. You know, a lot of this is connected, right? But how to approach others, there's really 4 steps that I don't want to call them non-negotiable, but they're non-negotiable.
Yeah. Well, they are for me, and it's, so many people, this thing we teach called the social covenant and, how to resolve conflict. But so many people struggle with conflict resolution. Number one, because they think it's bad. And, we believe conflict's not bad. Unresolved conflict is bad. Conflict plus resolution leads to unity, engagement, and productivity. And part of it's because they don't know how to approach others in a conflict. You could write a book probably called In Your Face Conflict, from years ago, not now, but I'm just saying that's how most people approach it, just go get in their face and get it done. And we think it's different than that. And so we teach, 4 principles, if you will, that when you're in a conflict, if you'll go with these 4 principles, we found that well over 95%, probably closer to 99% of the time, it goes well and it gets resolved.
So the 4 points, I think you kind of keep them in order, but especially the first one when you go in humility.
Yeah. When you go to someone and you start the whole conversation off, PW, could I share something with you? In the humility in this particular place, I may be wrong. This may be completely my lens. Nobody else in the world may agree with me, but could I share something with you? So that's what we're saying when we're saying go in humility. Step 2, we call it pre-forgiveness. Now, I can't come to you and say, can I share something? I may be wrong and I forgive you, because that pre-forgiveness is a place of the heart. But it's because I'm here for us to have a really good relationship. I'm not here to hurt you. And people who go in humility, who may be wrong, and are willing to admit they're wrong, they're really there about the relationship. Because what happens, for example, if you're doing something, you did something to me, but what if you're doing that to your kids? What if you're doing that to your spouse? What if you're doing that at work and no one's ever loved you enough to tell you? And that's what we call the 3rd step, is go in love. And in corporations, sometimes that word they may not want to use. A lot of them do. But all it means is I care more about you and your success in our relationship than I care about how you feel about me. Which means, and that's an area of approach that very few people really feel. But when you really feel it, it's easy. And then the last one is we teach the 4th step is give 100% of the facts and the truth. Because if you don't go for the facts and the truth, because sometimes they're not the same. Mm-hmm. Something can be factual, but not the whole truth. But we found that when you go in all 4 of those ways, humility, pre-forgiveness, love, and truth, that the conversation almost always goes well. And I've never been told no. When I've gone to someone and asked this question, not one time has anybody said to me, no, I don't want to hear what you have to say. Because when you're willing to be wrong, it's, one of the quotes is learn to give up your need to be right without losing your passion for truth. And when you really are able to do that, and you go, because you're going because you care about the other person. You're not going to justify yourself. You're going to help them and to restore whatever relationship might possibly be broken between the two of you.
Ford, you're one of the foremost authorities on conflict res. That's a fact. This is really when I hear you say it again for the 500th time. This is a mindset. Like, this is not like a 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a mindset prior to walking into the meeting, prior to sitting across from someone, and that first statement, I could be wrong. It appears, and it has for me personally, that it really brings like the temperature down a little bit. The anxiousness in the room subsides a little bit when I say, "Hey, I could be wrong."
Absolutely. Think of it as just basically sucking the negative energy right out of the room. Social anxiety, which we teach about, fear of failure plus the motivation to succeed. In a meeting like that, lots of times there's anxiety, there's distress going in. But when you start that way, guess what? You just take it right out of the room, if you mean it. Again, so many of these tools, you have to mean them. They are a place of the heart. But as you know, so often, when people don't go to the person, they go someplace else. And that's where disaster takes place. We call that gossip. And boy, that now we start getting into major problems that get so much harder to overcome than just going straight to that person.
I don't want to say that everyone I've experienced a lot of hard hearts in the workplace. They're there to do their job. They don't care about people. They want to get their check and go home. So these two middle steps, right? When you go in pre-forgiveness and you go in love, to one of those people to try to teach this to them, how do you break through, when you're in one of your live 2-day events and you pick people out. I've been in, like, you'll say dude in the blue jacket or lady in the, like, there's people with their body language when you're teaching specific tools, they're having an issue with that, or there's so much guilt when you're telling them who they are or how they've been treating people. Like, those two middle ones are really tough. I don't think that's an event or a one-time thing. That you could have to do some chipping away when you're talking about going pre-forgiveness. Some people would never wrap their head around that and go and love or care.
Yeah. And again, when you put those two together, I don't know how to fully explain in a short podcast, if you will, the specialness of those 4 steps working together. What happens relationally between those two people on the spot and forever. And again, part of what you're talking about is a highly transactional person, who just really wants to get the work done. They're really not about relationships. And of course, we have a whole book on that.
Yeah.
We have a whole word for that called relational, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. But yeah, this approach, in PW, I just want to move into the gossip conversation for just a minute. Because what happens when we don't go to that person, this stuff builds up, and it gets pent up. And then, some people call it venting, but, I call it gossip. And all that is if you go talk negatively, about someone to someone who's not part of the problem or part of the solution. And then once you open that can of worms, okay, now that truth and the facts that we talked about a while ago, there's all kinds of stuff out there that could be getting said that's different than the actual reality of, could be something just a simple miscommunication. But yeah, I just want to continue to say that, great people talk about solutions, vision, solutions, ideas. Average people talk about things, small people talk about other people, smaller people let them, smaller people join them, and even smaller people tell others. But what would happen if we truly could give up the need to be right and we could go talk to the person instead of about the person? Let me ask you a question. What do you think would happen to all your relationships if you did that. That's a hypothetical, but here's a real question. Do you believe there's anybody in the world that could talk negative to me about you and get away with it?
Probably not. 100% not.
How do you know that?
Because we have that relationship.
Yeah, but people that you've talked to me negative about, what did I tell you?
Yeah. Well, they know we're in social covenant together.
You got 48 hours to go
Yeah.
talk to them.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to do that to you, I'm certainly going to do that for you.
Yeah.
And so, but when you go in this approach, hey, PW, can I share something with you? I may be wrong. Okay, I feel like that was gossip, and if you don't feel it is, let's talk about it. But I care about you. I don't want you to be gossiping. I don't want you to hurt your relationships. I don't want you to have that reputation. Because this thing right here that we're talking about, these 4 steps, they are trust builders. So it's not just that you're restoring the relationship, you're building trust in ways that most people don't know how to build.
So there's a lot of leadership gurus, companies, organizations that talk about conflict resolution. And I think they talk about it like, Ford, you've heard me say this before, here's how to resolve the conflicts, now go build the house. Like, this is a tool you can put in your pocket. Again, practice, read your manual, read the steps, go through it. This is a mindset. You're not going to blow in the meeting and take your manual out,
Yeah.
right? It probably won't work as well if you do it that way.
Well, I actually have told people before, if you need your manual, take it with you the first time, if you mean it.
Yeah.
If you don't mean it, don't take your manual. But, we talked about before on the 6-step apology, a lot of the tools we teach, we say write it down. Take it in there with you if you need to. But if you're robotic about it, if you're robotic about these 4 steps, they may not believe you. In other words, people can tell if it's heartfelt when you say, I may be wrong. Or they can tell if you're just saying it because you just want to get a chance to get a blow in.
So we're talking about resolving conflict. How to approach others sits squarely in the middle of the social covenant. Ford, share a story on this last piece about going 100% truth.
Yeah.
There's a difference between truth and facts.
Yeah.
Can you share a story where you were modeling this and got to the bottom and there was a difference between truth and the facts?
Yeah, I think I'd like to share a story on the other end
Okay.
where someone came to me.
Okay.
Because that way that's easier,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay. So one time a CEO that I was working with called me and said that his best friend for 20 years had gossiped to him about me. And I said, well, what'd you tell him? He said, I told him I'm in a social covenant with you, that he needs to come tell you. And I said, well, will he talk to me? And he said, no, he doesn't trust you. And I said, And he goes, he thinks you're an out-and-out liar. And I said, okay. He said, do you want to know what he said? I said, I do not. If he doesn't want to come talk to me, there's nothing I can do about it. But I don't want to get into he said, she said. So he says, well, would you let me come with him to talk to you? I said, absolutely. So they come, and he says to me, I know for a fact that you're a liar. I said, okay, well, I appreciate that. Can you help me with that? He goes, when you were telling your story years ago, you told a story about how you had been an external consultant and an internal senior VP in a certain company. And there was a background check. One of our leaders in our city called and did a background check on you and found out that you never worked there. So I know for a fact that you lied. And I thought, okay, how do I deal with this? Because I don't want to be defensive. And I said, well, what if I could prove to you that all that's true? Well, you can't. It's not possible. We checked. And I said, well, what if I could? He goes, but you can't. I said, but I'm just asking, what if I could? Would you talk to me again? And he said, yes. So I called that company and said, I want to do a background check on someone who was there as a senior vice president, a consultant, then a senior vice president to the HR department. It was a big, big company. And so I did that, and I said, I'd like to check on Ford Taylor. And they called me back and said, he never worked here. And I said, I know. And they said, what? I said, this is Ford. I said, could you pull up Jerry F. Taylor? And of course, they went and pulled up all my paperwork because all my tax reports say Jerry F. Taylor because my first name's Jerry. And so I went back and met with this young man, and I said, well, can I show you something? And I slid him the 1099s and the W-2s because I was internal for 2 years. And he goes, how do I know you didn't make these up? And I said, well, if you know anything about my technology skills, then you'll know I didn't make that up. Well, then I slipped my Social Security card across, and he looked at it and he goes, your first name is Jerry? I said, it is. And he said, oh my God, what have we done? So years of gossip went on that I was a liar, because the fact was they called into the background check. And the fact was they told them that I never worked there. But the truth was they didn't know my first name was Jerry. And I've got lots of stories like that with lots of different people, where all someone had to do was pick up the phone and say, Ford, I may be wrong. I did a background check on you, and they told me you didn't work there. But I care about you, and I want to be sure that you don't have a blind spot here, and could we talk about this? And I could have said, yeah, let's pick up the phone and call the CEO right now. He'll take my call, and we'll just put this to rest. But that's just an example of not going in a posture of humility, pre-forgiveness, love, and truth, what can happen to someone's reputation when the facts were the facts, but the truth was something different from the facts. So there's one example of how simple that would have been years earlier
Wow.
to deal with.
So we're talking about how to approach others. Page 11 in my manual. I don't know. Is it always going to be on page 11?
It's kind of hard to change those pages right now because we got so many people around the world doing this. It's hard to make those changes in all these different languages and stuff. When you make one change, it's just a whole domino effect. So.
Yeah. So we're trying to resolve conflict. This is modeling how to approach others. This is a one-on-one meeting. We're squared up. You coached me forward about my tone of voice and the volume of my voice, which is not in here, but a little extra, because I'm a loud talker and I talk with enthusiasm, but in resolving conflict, that could come out wrong. So I'm very aware now of voice, tonality, inflection, and I intentionally bring my volume down. I actually think in numbers. So if I normally talk at an 8, in this meeting or in this setting, I want to talk at a 4 or a 5.
Yeah, you're spot on. And you said earlier how everything we do is so connected, and communication is one of them. You just said it. You know, our body language is 55%, tone of voice is 38, and our words are 7. And so if you go into someone with an 8 or 9 or 10 volume, I may be wrong, you know, can I share something with you? I mean, that's going to be hard.
Yeah.
You know, that body language and that
Yeah.
tone's not lined up with the words. And when they're lined up, as you found out, you know, lowering that voice, getting that tone and that body language lined up with the actual words, that's a huge game changer.
So 4 steps: go in humility, go in pre-forgiveness, go in love or care, and speak 100% of the truth. Go in truth 100% of the time. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Ford, this is a tool that, again, we're going to have to practice. Take me through a quick prep. Someone who doesn't know us, doesn't know our material, is in conflict, trying to resolve it, wants to resolve it. They've got the 4 steps. We're going to put it in the description of the video, but coach them through this right before they go into that meeting.
Yeah, and again, like you said earlier, you know, write it down. Write down what you want to say. Don't try to get in there and guess at it. You might role play a little bit. You'll find, I think, on most of these tools, and this is one of them, that once you use it 3 or 4 times, it'll start coming more and more natural. But if you can write it down, if you can check yourself, you know, am I really going in humility, or am I really going to get my point across? You know, and if you're going to get your point across, then please just don't tell anybody you're using TL material, because that is not what we teach. But yeah, if you can do that and really go in the posture, you know, that I care about that other person and their success. You know, one of my favorite stories was an executive coaching client, and when I do an executive coaching, I normally make them spend 2 days with me before I move into the year. And I'll never forget, this is what makes me believe so much, this kind of story, and why I keep doing what I do. And on the second day, we were upstairs in our house, and this man looked at me and he said, I really like you. And I said, hey buddy, my wife's right downstairs, you know, my weak humor. He goes, do you want to know why? I said, if you want to tell me. I said, what is it? He goes, you loved me enough yesterday to tell me things that no one has ever said to me. He said, but you did it with so much care, so much love, so much you might be wrong. And he said, but I now realize after one day, I can go home and restore my relationship with my wife, my kids, and I can take the turnover down in my company. And that was just one day. That's the value of loving someone enough, caring someone enough about someone enough to shoot straight with them in a way that you may be wrong, and that's okay if I'm wrong. I'm okay with apologizing if I'm wrong. And that's another posture to go in with. If you get in there and find out you're wrong, be willing to go watch the podcast on the 6-step apology and apologize for even bringing it up.
Good stuff, Ford. There's so much stuff here. Your website, transformlead.com. We've got live events. I always think a great first impression of the material of you would be to go to a live event. But we also have some digital products. You can get them on time on your phone. You can take them through an LMS. There's no reason not to get the material. We really removed all the excuses for those people that said, I can't take 2 days off work. There's no way that I can leave work for 2 days. We've kind of closed all those loops now.
Yeah, it's fun to have our LMS program that people can watch it in, 3 to 5 minutes. We have a new technology on a platform called StoryPath that people could sign up for, and every day get a 2 to 4 minute drip. I mean, just every day it just comes at whatever time you pick. So we're really excited about having these new tools, and as you know, I'm excited about going back on the road and doing the live events again. Some people, I get asked a lot, when are you going to retire? Well, I'm never going to retire. I'm always going to continue to refire, and so
That's awesome.
going back on the road again is another refire. So let's go. But I would like to share a free tool with our audience if they want to go deeper into this, how to approach one another, the social covenant, gossip, 6-step. You can text the word social covenant to 53123. 53123, the word social covenant, and you can get a 51-minute teaching that would come over a 19-day period, or you can watch it all at once. That's just a drip. But it'll take you deeper into the things that we talked about today.
Good stuff. How to approach others. This and many more tools we're covering here on the Ford Taylor Talks podcast. Ford, take us out of here.
Yeah, thank you to the listeners for joining us. This is what keeps us going. Your questions coming in, so please keep bringing the questions. We want to answer what is helpful to you. And remember, we're all about making leaders who make leaders who make leaders, to show them transformational leadership, how to make leadership operational. And in that process, don't forget, love, influence, transform.